Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I am Oliver Gwynne, and this is where we talk about marketing, data, and philosophy. This week, we're talking about data in public services and what do I see as the near-term future in terms of data and priorities. It's not AI. So when we think about data, we have to consider the fact that commercial companies are leading the way in every aspect. And it's similar in a way, I think, to how most innovations for cars came from racing. Almost every aspect of cars, such as seatbelts and mirrors, they were all first implemented in order to win races and then later on adapted for public use. And we see something very similar happen in the commercial world when we think about the internet and data. There's an unbelievable amount of money that has been invested into tracking your journey and selling that information to various people so that they can then do research and try and sell you some more things. And I'm not going to sit here and debate whether that's good or bad or useful. But even when we think about modern relationships with data, we think about things like insurers who, if you wear a fitness band, which they will give you for free, if you have a gym membership, which they will give you for free, and they can track that data, they can see you're a fit and healthy young person, then they will lower your premiums on your health insurance. And they will have accurate data to know that, hey, actually you are sick. Actually, something has gone wrong with you because they can tell that you've had this data, unless I guess you give that watch to somebody else for a long period of time. And so commercial companies are leading the way with this joint up thinking and delivering better results for people, fairer results for people. We think about the finance world. We think about open banking data as opposed to credit scores. Credit scores do not make any sense. They are dumb. They are, in theory, how well do you pay back debt, which makes sense. But what if you're a more sensible person who avoids debt? What if you are somebody who pays in cash? What if you are somebody not from that country and therefore do not have a credit score associated with that company? Then you have a bad credit score. You can't get as much money despite the fact that you are on paper more sensible with your money. What if you're a rich person, you come from a rich person and you've never had any debt? You get a worse credit score, which doesn't make any sense. And also, credit scoring works on aggregate levels, which means that people with families get worse credit scores. In the United States, it has been proven that people from an African-American background get worse credit scores based on the performance of other people who are also from that background. And so open banking is all the data that is related 100% to you. It's 100% personal because it's basically looking at your spending and your transactions over a long period of time. It's a large set of data that most people could not deal with in the past, but now they can. And so they are dealt with more fairly. And who is leading the way on that? It is banks, it is loan people. It is not the government. The government in certainly the UK and certainly most companies is lagging way behind. And they are the people who have the biggest use case. They can make the most positive difference to our lives if we are willing to, one, consent to that data, and two, as a priority, start connecting the data dots together. Anybody who knows me or they know my story or they're familiar with it will know that the reason that I originally started a business was because my mom got sick. We fell through the system because she had basically a 20-minute memory. Most people who were dealing with her on a job seekers front, on a medical front, she seemed okay. But if they were to speak to her for 22 minutes or a little bit longer, they would realize that she was repeating herself. She couldn't retain that memory and she was also having sort of fits. But we fell through the system and the systems didn't talk to each other. And it meant that there was a very long delay between, for example, getting a note from the doctor to then being able to sign off from job seekers, but still getting some support, and then sending that doctor's notes to the bank so that they could give us some support with the mortgage. And all of these kinds of things would, one, separated in terms of time, which meant that time meant we still had to pay the normal amount, which meant we lost money, which put us in a worse position, which made us more and more vulnerable. And it also meant that we were very much judged on the person that we were speaking to in that particular instance. I remember we went to see, my mum went with my grandmother a couple of times to the doctors and they said, oh, I don't think there's anything wrong with you. And so I went with her and the doctor was going to sign her off and say, we don't need to do any more tests. And it was only because I was like, I am not leaving unless you agree to do some tests. There's definitely something wrong with her. I will 100% refuse to leave and cause a fuss unless you order a CAT scan. And it's only because I did that we found that there was something wrong with her. And so how could that situation be avoided? What if you were in a situation where somebody, all of my life I had trusted doctors completely. I'd done whatever they had said, and it was only because I knew something was not quite right, and I did not believe that it could be nothing that I was so insistent in this particular case. But what if I had been a meeker person or a more trusting person? Well, my mom would probably be dead at this point, generally. And so that's not a good outcome for people. We almost fell completely between the cracks and ended up homeless. We could not afford to pay heating for a large period of time. And so this is something that is very close to my heart, but I believe it is something that is very relevant. Which government service in the UK has been digitized, and it's amazing? Naturally, it is HMRC, so that they can take more money from us, but it is amazing. I remember when I started my first job, sort of 16, I was emergency taxed. And there was some paperwork that I had to do, and I had to do it within 2 weeks or something. I had missed that deadline, and so I never got that money back. What a crap thing to do. You imagine it's your first job, you're excited to earn money, the government emergency taxes you because you've not filled in some stupid paperwork, and then because there was a deadline which you did not know about, because you did not know how to circumnavigate the process that was ahead of you, you lose money because of it. Your money that you have rightfully earned. That is not a good first impression of the government. Doesn't make you think, oh yeah, I'm not going to cheat on my taxes. I'm not going to lie to the government because I trust them and I know that they're going to treat me fairly. No, it makes you think the opposite. And for those people who are maybe borderline, those people who are from a lower socioeconomic status, who maybe are vulnerable to not wanting to work anyway because they have learned that from their families. Imagine the first time you get a job, you're emergency taxed, and so 30% of your wages gone. Are you more or less likely to participate in this system that we all do, which is that we give back to help others, and that when we need that, we will get the support that we need? No, of course not. And so HMRC have done an amazing job of digitizing their services. It is so much quicker than it used to be. They give you the money so much faster. It's not a case that you're waiting to the end of the year and then finding, oh, actually, we haven't taken as much money from you, and so we're going to start taking more. And you're like, hang on a second, I need that money. Thank you very much. They're much fairer in the way they treat people. It's a lot quicker than it used to be. But that's only one service. The problem we've got is that most government services are very fragmented. Different departments do not talk to each other. But as I said, in a world where your doctor data could also speak to your financial data or whatever other services that you were accessing, in a world where you could verify things very, very quickly, the amount of good things that could happen. Imagine if you are trying to book a doctor's appointment and you need to sign yourself off of work, but you're not able to get a doctor's appointment for 2 or 3 weeks because it's just so busy, but you're ill and work is saying, well, you can't take any more time off. It's just stupid. If you could just prove to them, hey, I've tried to book a doctor's appointment and I can't, I am sick, most employers would think, oh, well, fair enough. I understand that this is a situation that we've all employed. And so where do I see a priority for any government services is to start thinking about the relationships that we have between systems, to think where is the overlap where that would make a lot of sense. And I think it's mostly health, job seekers, and then financial. Those three things would be a good starting point. And then also maybe sort of council services as well. If you know somebody is sick and they have been long-term sick and they have been signed off from the doctors, what do they have? There are certain conditions that mean they're more likely to need help from local support services. And instead of somebody having to go to you and go through a whole system and apply for something and all of this kind of thing, so well, maybe you can start proactively identifying these people and seeing who may need support so that people don't end up suffering in silence, and so that you can be the one to reach out to them. My dad has Parkinson's, and he is a very proud person. He won't get a walking stick for some reason, but he needs help, and he's eventually reached out to the government service, and they're looking at how they can go over somebody once a week to clean up his apartment, to help him to do some sort of assistance with his walking and build up his strength a little bit and all that kind of thing. But it was only because he eventually got to a point where he was willing to access that service. Wouldn't it be great if the local council was aware of his situation beforehand? And although you might think, well, we'll spend a lot of money if we start being proactive instead of reactive, even if they were aware of his case beforehand, at least they would have a plan or an idea that, hey, this person's been to the doctors 3 or 4 times with this condition. There's a 50% likeliness that they're going to be on this service. At least we can budget ahead of time. At least we can think about how we provide that service. At least we can look at who is available in his area and think that maybe we would need an extra person. And so I see a priority with government services and local services. First of all, they need to digitize, and they need to do that as if their lives depended on it, because if they've not done that already, they are wasting money, they're wasting our money, and they are not helping people when they need to do that. I say that as an absolute fact today. If they're lagging behind, this is the time to start looking at data and putting data infrastructure in place. That infrastructure needs to all match so that all the systems can talk to each other. We know that central government in the UK uses Azure, so all local councils should be forced, basically, okay, maybe we don't like Azure, but we're all going to use Azure, which means that everything can, in theory, fit on the same thing. And we can model that data at least to the same infrastructure. And we're all going to use Power BI or whatever they use. We're going to have one reporting tool. And then everybody is on the same page. We can hire certain people with certain skills. Okay, maybe we're going to lag behind in terms of what's the most recent technology or the best technology for the use case. But we can have an equality of service for public services, which are both at a local council level and at a national level. But that's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen for a very simple reason. If you've ever looked or tried as a company to bid for any public services, you'll know that the procurement service is completely outdated to the point of stupidity. This is what happens. And I joked about this recently on somebody's post, but it's 100% true. So if you are a company today and you can help with a government service, what happens? Well, that department will spend 6 months coming up with an ITT, sort of an invitation to tender. And that tender will go out on a public forum so that anybody in theory can bid for it. Then, if there's something that you think you can do as a company, you normally have to create an account on a website that looks like it's been made in 1992. It is a really old-fashioned website that asks you a load of questions that are all publicly available information and easily found, but you have to put them in manually, which takes ages. Once you've done that, you then finally get all the documents, access to them to see if you can help, and 9 times out of 10, it turns out that you can't. These documents are long. There's 50, 60 pages in nature, but there's normally only 3 or 4 paragraphs that are actually useful to determine if you can help, and even those tend to be a little bit vague. You spend 3 months waiting to see what all the questions are on those services, another 3 months while they evaluate them. And then at the end of that process, normally a year has passed and they will go with whoever they have been using for the last 20, 30 years. That is probably an accurate portrayal of how most government services are contracted. The only companies that can help most governments are large scale companies, the Capitals of the world, the BCGs of the world, the EYs, all of these people that we mock openly on LinkedIn for being not particularly useful. What do we know about these companies? We know for a fact that they hire a few really talented, good people, and they are the face of a particular skill set. And then under them sits a load of 20-year-olds with absolutely no experience. And these are the people who do the work. We know this as a fact. But these are the people who get the government contracts because they know how to do them. They have the cost available to go for all this red tape and do them. And while that happens, and while this process is slow, we will not innovate. We will not do things quickly. We will not get good value for money. And although SMEs are invited and encouraged to do so, it's normally as a partner to these bigger, safer companies. And my frustration with this is that the small companies would not add on zeros just because it's a government contract. They would not change their way of working. I know we as a company would not change our way of working if we were to get a government contract. We will want to create value. We will want to do things quickly and hopefully without so much red tape. We would want to deliver some value. And I'm sure there's lots of SMEs that are watching this thinking, yes, I would happily deliver value if it wasn't for the amount of awful red tape in the way. And so If governments are going to start tying together data, there needs to be a mass program of this. And bear in mind that there's not so many skilled people in the UK. There just isn't for data. You need as many people as you can. And so what needs to happen is we need to completely change this fear-induced way of thinking when we think about procurement, this worry that people aren't going to be able to deliver, because most people, if they're in a commercial realm, they have a lot of case studies, they have loads of ways of working, and you can very easily tell if somebody can deliver things simply by hiring them to do something small. That's the easiest, quickest way of doing something. If we start to think of our services more as companies, no company on earth would spend 6 months looking to get some help in and then eventually doing things based on 6 month old information, because that's what was pitched and agreed one. Companies don't do that. They innovate quickly and they're not afraid to sort of fail, as long as they fail in a short, cost effective way. And if government don't start centralizing data quickly, they are going to lag behind, so much to the point that they will not be helping people who need it, because the systems do not talk to each other currently. And so that is my rant. That is my 5 cents to anybody in government who might be looking and thinking, how do we get ahead with data and our data services? I'm telling you as a fact that you are lagging behind. And the only way you can start to get current is by considering smaller companies, changing the procurement process and understanding what is important, which is, first of all, pick one system and everybody works to that system. Second of all, figure out what is important, what departments speak to each other. It seems complicated, but it is not that complicated when you start to talk to real people and understand when people drop between the gaps. And third of all, you need the manpower in the short term. But once that data is modeled, it is modeled for life. This is a short-term expenditure with a long-term benefit. And as long as you are framing things around the benefit to people and you can explain nice and clearly to people, they will opt in. Because today their data is already being used by hundreds of organizations, and the only reason it is being used is to sell to them. Imagine how happy they will be to give you that data, knowing it will actually benefit them. Thanks for watching, and tune in next week for some more off the cuff thoughts.